The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression's 2026 College Free Speech Rankings show that more than one-third of students say using violence to stop a campus speech can be acceptable. Joining us now to discuss is John Lott, the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. So first of all, good afternoon to you, John. Why do you think this is the case right now?
Well, unfortunately, there's been a big change in terms of people's acceptance of free speech. There's been this confusion between saying that somehow hate speech is not protected by the First Amendment, whereas that's exactly what the First Amendment was designed to go and try to protect. There's a difference between advocating violence or engaging in violence and going and saying something that, strongly disagrees with somebody. But unfortunately, people on the left are much less tolerant of opposing political views. And, in some sense, the views of the students are just corresponding to the views of faculty. I've been an academic most of my life. I've had positions, research or teaching positions at Stanford, University of Chicago, the Wharton Business School, Yale, UCLA. And overwhelmingly, the faculty at those types of institutions are very left-wing, and they just want to have people who have views similar to themselves. They view people who have views different than theirs as being unacceptable. You look at the types of statements that people from Hillary Clinton or others calling people that they disagree with deplorables and what have you, that their views are just kind of outside the range of things which are acceptable for people to say. And, the irony is that somebody like Charlie Kirk was actually engaged in talking to people. He would listen to them. He would let them get their say. He wanted them to be able to go and speak. He didn't speak over them. He would go and ask them questions in response. He was very respectful of people whose views were different than his. And, you just see the number of academics and others who have, reveled in Charlie's death there. And you get some idea why you might have so many students that have the views that they do. I think they're just reflecting the faculty at a lot of these universities.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that this survey is showing this right now. And apparently there is a generational gap as well, because apparently
Sure.
more Gen X or boomers, they comparatively speaking, more Gen Z are saying that violence is acceptable or can be acceptable to stop speech. John, why do you think there may be a generational gap to this?
I think it has something to do with when people went through college. When I first became an academic in the 1980s, you basically had two groups of liberals. You had those who had gone into academia before the Vietnam War, and those who went in afterwards. And so, I may disagree with the ones who went in before, but they enjoyed the process of talking to you and arguing. And sometimes you would change their views, and sometimes they would change your views on it. But it was the whole part of being an academic to go and try to figure things out. The academics who came in after the Vietnam War were very different. They just wanted to have people who had views similar to themselves. And, for a lot of academia, they just live in a bubble. They're not exposed to people that have other types of views. And unfortunately, the students are like that too. I mean, you look at the text messages that they got from the murderer, Charlie Kirk's murderer. He's talking about Charlie supposedly having hate speech. Charlie didn't have hate speech. He would ask people questions. He would ask people questions, what is a woman? And people would view the very fact that he would ask that question as hate speech. The very fact that he would ask somebody to go and justify, their views on things, to explain their views. People view that as challenging because a lot of the people who live in the academic bubble don't even have those types of questions, those basic questions being asked. And so they view that hate, violence is an acceptable response. Is this person who murdered Charlie, he thought Charlie, because he would, the thing is, Charlie was pretty libertarian on these things. He didn't, if somebody was an adult and they wanted to become trans, he would disagree with them, but he would say, that's your choice to go and do that. That seems like the exact opposite of hate there. Charlie liked everybody. He was very courteous to everybody. I mean, one just has to go and listen to him listening patiently to all sorts of diatribes that he ran into on college campuses.
And, oftentimes at the end of those conversations where they're talking about gender, Charlie Kirk would actually, at the end of those debates, he would say, I would pray for you, right? I mean, so I don't know where the hate comes from when he's saying that. But John, how do we stop violence such as this before it happens in light of this assassination? And not just that, but the previous, the killing of Ukrainian refugee on the Charlotte train. Are there any signs perhaps that we can look for in a person's behavior? Can mental health professionals be able to tell?
Well, I mean, the fact the person who did the murder on the train in Charlotte had seen mental health care professionals. They had released the individual, so presumably they did not view him as a danger to himself or others. If you look at the mass murderers that we see, the mass public shooters, since 1998, over half of them were actually seeing mental health care professionals prior to their murders. And yet in not one single case were mental health care professionals able to identify these individuals. Obviously, they had mental health issues. What you find is that these individuals, at the very least, are overwhelmingly suicidal. Virtually all are suicidal. But the problem is that if mental health care professionals are not able to identify these individuals as a danger to themselves or others, what's your backup plan? And I look at the diaries and manifestos for these mass murderers where they explicitly explain why they pick the targets that they do. They want to go and commit suicide, but they want to do so in a way that will get the media attention. And they know the more people they kill, the more media attention that they're going to get. And so if you read the diaries or manifestos, like the Minneapolis mass murderer at the Catholic school there, or the Nashville school shooter, who both of them were trans individuals, they explicitly explain that they picked targets where they knew victims couldn't defend themselves. They picked gun-free zones. These guys may be crazy in some sense, but they're not stupid. They know if they place where their victims can't defend themselves, they're going to go and kill more people, and that's going to go and get them more media attention. Unfortunately, the media just absolutely refuses to go and cover those parts of their diaries and manifestos, even though, on our website at crimeresearch.org, we have literally dozens of statements from these mass murderers explaining that they pick targets where their victims can't go and defend themselves. And my guess is the whole gun control debate we have right now would be very different. But, with regard to the Charlotte murder that's there, the guy shouldn't have been out. He was released early from prison because of DI policies, these racial justice policies that say that people should go to jail in proportion to their racial group share of the population. He was arrested almost immediately in January for another felony that he had committed, but he was not jailed because they had eliminated bail for blacks there. The guy had been arrested 14 times for a range of crimes, including violent crimes, but had only been prosecuted a few times for those crimes. Whatever the mental health issues are there, he shouldn't have been out on the street. He shouldn't have been able to go and be possible to go and commit this crime.
So, John, I just want to ask you real quick, and this is the last thing. From what you're saying, If professionals cannot identify this beforehand, these attacks, if they can't do it reliably, then what alternative strategies do we have to, prevent this from happening beforehand?
Right. Well, even the mental health care professions have written numerous academic articles about their inability to go and identify these individuals beforehand. There's a whole academic literature on it, and I could talk about that. But you're exactly right. The question is, what's the backup plan that you have? People like the Charlottesville one, you should have kept them in jail. For others, when you're talking about mass public shootings, you need to make it so that victims themselves can defend themselves. Go and read the diaries and manifestos. These individuals want to get media attention. Now, I'm not saying get rid of the First Amendment that's there. I don't even know how you would do that. But if you can convince them that they're not going to be successful in killing people because somebody will be there quickly in order to go and stop them, you take away what they think is going to be their media attention. So rather than having schools like the one in Minneapolis, which was a gun-free zone, rather than signs in front of schools that say this school is a gun-free zone, have a sign in front of the school that says, warning, select teachers and staff at this school are carrying concealed and will use these guns to protect students and others that are there. You just can't have a police officer in uniform because that gives real tactical advantages. If you're going to have an officer there, the first person that's going to be killed if the attack's going to be there is going to be the officer. But you need to make it so that they don't believe that they're going to get the media attention that they're going to get. Even the Charlottesville case occurred in a gun-free zone, a weapons-free zone that was there. You have people who were standing literally sitting right nearby who saw the attack and looked away because, I don't blame the woman for looking away. She was much smaller than the man who had a knife. She had no weapon. There was nothing she was going to be able to do. And I can't guarantee that if they had been able to carry there, if it wasn't a gun-free zone, that either her or the man who was sitting behind them, who also saw this, would have been able to go and stop the attack. But at least there would have been a chance. And maybe this killer would have been more reticent to go and do the attack if he thought there were people there who would have been able to stop him.
Okay, well, John, it's always great to hear your comments today and some great ideas. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time.